Okay. Alright, so last time we read a bunch of different things that happened while David was king of Israel. We read about David basically at the peak of his powers, at the height of his life and career, and probably also his walk with God, at least before he starts to fall. The second part of David's life, or the second half of the story, is not as glorious as the first. He reaches the peak in 2 Samuel 7 and 1 Chronicles 17 when he is told by God that God's going to build a house for him, a dynasty, which will someday include Jesus Christ 1,000 years later. But David himself is still a man and is still susceptible to all of the moral failings that all men have. And so he's going to make a significant mistake in judgment here, which is going to cause him problems throughout the rest of his life. Now, this mistake in judgment, this David and Bathsheba affair, is going to take place during the context of another ongoing event, a war with the neighboring country of Ammon. Ammon and Moab were the countries that came out of Abraham's nephew Lot. And they are to the east of Israel. We already read about him fighting the Moabites. Actually, his background involves the Moabites because Ruth is a Moabite woman, and he actually went to the king of Moab at one point while he was running away from Saul. Didn't stay there, though. God told him not to stay there. But so he's actually dealt with Moab already as king. But we read about that in 2 Samuel 8. Now here in 2 Samuel 10, we read about hang on a second. We read about his war with Ammon. And unlike the war with Moab, which is covered in just a couple of verses, this war with Ammon is going to go on for a while. 2 Samuel 10. In the course of time, the king of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, just as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. Now, we have no idea what sympathy or kindness Hanun showed to David or when. We have no record of that anywhere in the scripture. We did read about David fleeing to other countries for a period of time to escape Saul. He ended up taking refuge with the Philistines for more than a year. He went to Moab. We read about him going to Moab, and the prophet came and got him. The prophet from God came and got him and said, you gotta leave here. We didn't read about him doing anything in Ammon. Apparently he did something. I don't know if it was during that same time frame or not. Now this Nahash guy is the same guy that Saul went to war with back when in the early days of Saul's kingship. This was actually his first thing, really, as king, that he got to do back in 1 Samuel 11. And it says at the beginning of 1 Samuel 11, Nahash the Ammonite went up and besieged Jabesh-Gilead. Now, Jabesh-Gilead was the same place that had all the people attacked and the women stolen for the tribe of Benjamin. We read about that at the end of Judges, early in the days of the Judges, actually. And that's where a lot of the Benjamite people trace their ancestry from, because that's where the few hundred Benjamite males that survived the civil war with Israel got a lot of their wives from. So a lot of the Benjamites, including probably Saul, trace their ancestry back to that town. And that town was oppressed by an Ammonite king named Nahash, who cut out their right eyes, or at least threatened to, and Saul went to war against him. Unless this is the same guy with the same name, it's probably, unless this is his son that has the same name. We're talking about the third generation here, Hanun. This is probably the same guy. It's probably the same Nahash. I don't know why David had a personal fondness for Nahash. Nothing in the scriptures indicate where that came from or how that came to be. But apparently he did, for whatever the reason. At any rate, apparently David is not going to go to war against him. He did go to war against Moab, and that seems, again, kind of weird, because Moab was part of David's heritage, and he did go there to take refuge from Saul. But he ended up fighting them, and we don't really know much about that, except for a couple of verses at the beginning of 2 Samuel 8. And as far as we know, we didn't read about him taking refuge in Ammon, yet he had some sort of affinity for Ammon, or its king at least, and apparently was not going to attack them until this sequence of events plays out here. I don't know. I really don't. I have no idea. Anyway, that's how it goes. When David's men came to the land, so David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father's passing. When David's men came to the land of the Ammonites, the Ammonite nobles said to Hanun their lord, "Do you think David is honoring your father by sending men to you to express sympathy? Hasn't David sent them to you to explore the city and spy it out and overthrow it?" So Hanun seized David's men. Apparently he agreed with them. Apparently they talked him into believing this. Now David had been attacking other countries. He fought Moab. He fought Edom, which is another neighboring nation, Israel, south of Moab. Maybe Ammon thinks, he's going to attack us no matter what we do. Now's our chance to shake off having to pay tribute to him or whatever. I don't know. This is not the only time we'll see a young, newly crowned king follow the advice of people he knows to his detriment. Israel is going to have a king named Rehoboam, son of Solomon, who's going to do the same thing. So Hanun seized David's men, shaved off half of each man's beard, cut off their garment to the middle of the buttocks and the hips, so they're naked from the waist down, and sent them away. Now, being naked from the waist down is one thing. But man, having your beard messed with, that's what starts a war in Israel, okay? Having your beard messed with, that is shame. That is disgrace. Having your pants cut off, that's one thing. Anybody can go buy a new pair of pants or a new tunic or whatever. But man, oh man, you mess with a man's beard and you might as well be asking for 10,000 men to come and knock down your doors. You do not mess with a man's beard in this culture. These men were very, very prideful about their beards. You can't think of a more certain way to invoke retribution on yourself than to mess with a man's beard. When David was told about this, he sent messengers to meet the men, for they were greatly humiliated. Again, not because they're naked, but because they have no beards. The king said, "Stay at Jericho till your beards have grown back, and then come back." The king doesn't want to see them without their beards. I mean, he's doing it somewhat for their own sake, so that nobody has to see them without their beards. But the king doesn't want to see them without their beards. I mean, they'd be disgraceful to the king to be around him if they don't have any beards. I mean, women don't have beards. I mean, there's nothing more disgraceful than for a grown man not to have a beard. Like, that's just unfathomably shameful and disgraceful in their culture. You might as well be a woman if you don't have a beard. Huh? When the Ammonites realized that they had become a stench in David's nostrils, they hired 20,000 Arameans. I don't know why they didn't expect that to begin with, but apparently they didn't. They hired 20,000 Aramean foot soldiers from Beth Rahab and Zobah, as well as the king of Makkah with 1,000 men, and also 12,000 men from Tob. On hearing this, David, so he's already fought these Arameans before. We're about that in chapter 8, starting in verse 5, that he was fighting the Arameans. That's basically people north of Israel. That's basically the area that we would call today Syria. And we're going to be dealing with these Arameans for some time to come. They're going to be a nuisance from now until basically the Assyrians come along. These Arameans are going to be the first. The Philistines are basically subdued. We're not really going to be dealing with them anymore. They were a problem in the days of the judges. and in the days of Saul, and into the beginning of David's reign. But David basically takes care of them. They're not going to be a problem any longer. But the Arameans are. The Arameans are to the north of Israel, and they're going to be a big nuisance now. So that's a couple hundred years until the Assyrians come along, and they replace the Arameans. That's how it goes. On hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. The Ammonites, the Ammonites came out and drew up in battle formation at the entrance to their city gate, while the Arameans of Zobah and Rahab and the men of Tob and Makkah were by themselves in the open country. So they're fighting near the capital of Ammon. They're in Ammonite territory, and the Arameans are coming to join the fight, and they're going to get behind Israel. Israel is going out to fight Ammon in Ammon territory, and then they're going to end up getting surrounded by the Arameans who are going to be approaching them from behind. Joab saw that there were battle lines in front of him and behind him. So he selected some of the best troops in Israel and deployed them against the Arameans. So they'd be the ones going fighting at their backs. The Arameans are coming up from behind them. He put the rest of the men under the command of Abishai, his brother, and deployed them against the Ammonites. Joab said, "If the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to come to my rescue. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will come to rescue you. Be strong, and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his eyes." So they're fighting. Okay, so Ammon is on the okay. Let's see if I can. Do I have a map? I'm going to be a little bit hard to show a map. Well, that's the land of the 12. Okay, there we go. This is. Okay, here, David and Solomon. Okay, so here we have this map, and you see Aram up here in the northeast, and then down south of that is Ammon. So Ammon is on the eastern border of Israel, and Aram is north of Ammon. So they went to go fight the Ammonites to their east, and then while they were lined up against the Ammonites, the Arameans came from the north and surrounded them. So if they lose this fight, they're going to lose the control of the north and the east. They're going to be wide open for attack and invasion from the north and the east. This is a pretty serious situation here. They had fought the Arameans before to secure their northern borders earlier. If they lose this battle, though, they're going to be overrun from the north and east by the Ammonites and the Arameans. So this is pretty serious stuff. David himself is not present for this battle. Remember, we read in an earlier section, at the end of 2 Samuel, actually, a story about a fight that he had with the Philistines at some point, where he almost died, and his men asked him, and they saved him. He didn't die. But his men told him not to come out to battle with them any longer. And he is not coming out to battle with them here. So this is probably after that. That story right at the end of 2 Samuel probably occurs chronologically before this to explain why David is not fighting any longer. He's probably past his prime as a fighting man and is not physically participating in the battles any longer. Then that's going to be very important to the next part of the story, when he's at home, when the army is off at war, and he doesn't have anything to do. Then Joab and the troops with him advanced to fight the Arameans, and they fled before them. So the Arameans weren't really expecting the Israelites to fight back. They were probably expecting the Israelites to cower in fear at the size of their army. And when they didn't really have a plan B. When the Ammonites saw the Arameans were fleeing, they fled before Abishai and went inside the city. So Joab returned from fighting the Ammonites and came to Jerusalem. After the Arameans saw they had been routed by Israel, they regrouped. Hadadezer, remember him, we read about him in 2 Samuel 8, or a guy at least with that name, that king name. Hadadezer had Arameans brought from beyond the river, that's beyond the river Euphrates. They went to Helam, with Shobach, the commander of Hadadezer's army, the commander of the army leading them. When David was told of this, he gathered all Israel, crossed the Jordan, and went to Hebron. So David is taking charge of this operation now. Previously he was not, but now he's going to lead the fight. The Arameans formed, so he's not totally retired yet, although it seems like he's moving in that direction. The Arameans formed their battle lines to meet David and fought against him, but they fled before Israel, and David killed 7,000 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also struck down Shobach, the commander of their army, and he died there. When all the kings who were vassals of Hadadezer saw they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with the Israelites and became subject to them. So the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites anymore. So the Aram-Ammon alliance is broken. But they're not going to rush into battle to help the Ammonites any longer. Here is the First Chronicles account of this battle. This is First Chronicles 19. In the course of time, Nahash, king of the Ammonites, died, and his son succeeded him as king. David thought, I will show kindness to Hanun, son of Nahash, because his father showed kindness to me. So David sent a delegation to express his sympathy to Hanun concerning his father. When David's men came to Hanun in the land of the Ammonites to express sympathy to him, the Ammonite nobles said to Hanun, Do you think David is honoring your father by sending men to you to express sympathy? Haven't his men come to you to explore and spy out the country and overthrow it? So Hanun seized David's men, shaved them, shaved their beards, as we know from 2 Samuel, cut off, he may have shaved their heads too, he may have, but the important thing was shaving their beards. Cut off their garments in the middle of the buttocks, cut their tunics in half above the hips, and sent them away. When someone came and told David about the men, he sent messengers to meet them because they were greatly humiliated. The king said, Stay at Jericho till your beards have grown, and then come back. By the way, Jericho is the place, of course, that Joshua and them tore down years earlier. It is currently something. It's going to be rebuilt into an actual city again. Right now, it's just an outpost, I guess. When the Ammonites realized they had become a stench in David's nostrils, Hanun and the Ammonites sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire chariots and charioteers from Aram Naharaim, Aram Makkah, and Zobah. They hired 22,000 chariots and charioteers, as well as the king of Makkah with his troops, who came and camped near Medeba, while the Ammonites were mustered from their towns and moved out for battle. On hearing, my throat's kind of dry. On hearing this, David sent Joab out with the entire army of fighting men. The Ammonites came out and drew up in battle formation at the entrance to their city, Medeba. We just read about that. While the kings who had come were by themselves in the open country. Joab saw that there were battle lines in front of him and behind him, so he selected some of the best troops in Israel and deployed them against the Arameans. He put the rest of the men under the command of Abishai his brother, and they were deployed against the Ammonites. Joab said, If the Arameans are too strong for me, then you are to rescue me. But if the Ammonites are too strong for you, then I will rescue you. Be strong, and let us fight bravely for our people and for the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his eyes. Then Joab and the troops with him advanced to fight the Arameans, and they fled before them. When the Ammonites saw the Arameans were fleeing, they too fled before his brother Abishai and went inside the city. So Joab went back to Jerusalem. Now, when it says he's going back to Jerusalem, what it means here is that they're not going to pursue a siege against the Ammonite city, Medeba, or Medeba, whatever that is. That's what that means, okay? He isn't fighting the Arameans, but they're going to go back to Ammon to pursue a siege against them at a later point in time, which is what sets the context for the next section. So he is not pursuing a siege against Ammon here, but they are pursuing the Arameans back to their cities and fighting them out in the fields. After the Aramean, excuse me, after the Arameans saw that they had been routed by Israel, they sent messengers and had Arameans brought from beyond the river, the Euphrates, with Shobach, the commander of the army, leading them. When David was told of this, he gathered all Israel and crossed the Jordan. He advanced against them and formed his battle lines to oppose them, or opposite them. David formed his lines to meet the Arameans in battle, and they fought against him. But they fled before Israel, and David killed 7,000 of their charioteers and 40,000 of their foot soldiers. He also killed Shobach, the commander of their army. When the vassals of Hadadezer saw they had been defeated by Israel, they made peace with David and became subject to him. So the Arameans were not willing to help the Ammonites anymore. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read the next few verses as we go into 1 Chronicles 20, because this finishes the story of the war against Ammon. Remember, there's a break here. This war against Ammon is not over yet. It got interrupted by the Ammonites going back into their city, and Joab choosing not to pursue a siege at that point in time, and then the rest of the Israelites, David included, ended up finishing the fight with the Arameans, who had been hired by the Ammonites to help. But the fight against the Ammonites is still ongoing, and it doesn't finish until later. So here in 1 Chronicles, I'm going to go ahead and move on to 1 Chronicles 20 and read about the ending to this war against Ammon. And then we're going to go back and find out there was a lot more that happened in the course of that as well, that 1 Chronicles just skips entirely. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, Joab led out the armed forces. Joab is not the king. The king is not going out to war. So this is the following spring. So apparently the last battle against Ammon and Aram happened the previous fall sometime. And they finished off the fight with the Arameans probably sometime in the closing days of the fall season the previous year. And they weren't going to bother engaging in a siege against Ammon during the winter. So the following spring, they go back out again to resume the siege against Ammon, because that war has not yet been settled. That fight has not yet been finished. But the king is not going. He wasn't going initially either in the first round of battle. He did participate in the pursuit of the Arameans. But the first round of battles against Ammon and Aram, David wasn't involved in that either. So he is clearly stepping back from being a front-facing leader of the army. We read in, of course, the story where they told him not to do that any longer, so it's probably after that. But Joab is going out to war, not David. He laid waste the land of the Ammonites and went to Rabbah and besieged it, but David remained in Jerusalem. Joab attacked Rabbah and left it in ruins. David took the crown from the head of the king. Its weight was found to be a talent of gold, and it was set with precious stones. I'm guessing this is, of course, Ammon, the king that the new king read about in the previous chapter, and it was placed on David's head. He took a great quantity of plunder from the city, and brought out the people who were there, consigning them to labor with saws and iron picks and axes. David did this to all the Ammonite towns. Then David and his entire army returned to Jerusalem. Okay, that will finish off the story of David in 1 Chronicles until we get down to the time of the census, which is going to be the last thing we read about when it comes to David. So we're going to go back to 2 Samuel now, for then we're going to be here for quite a while. And we're going to find out that there was a lot more that went on during that time when the war with Ammon was going on that the chronicler simply doesn't talk about at all.